David is running and hiding from King Saul. He's been the captain of King Saul's army. But King Saul is jealous of David because David has killed thousands and tens of thousands. And the people are praising David. And even though David is his son-in-law, Saul's tried to kill him. So David has gathered up a group of about 400 men, and Abiathar, who has been part of the high priest's group, and all the rest of them have been killed by Saul, he's with David. And so David and Abiathar and maybe about 400 men are hiding from Saul, and they're down near the Dead Sea. And down near the Dead Sea, there's nothing. It's barren. And there are no trees. There are hardly any bushes. And there's some pillars that look like salt. And you can see salt floating, chunks of it, almost like ice in the Dead Sea. But there's also a beautiful hill, a mountain really, and up at the top of it is a beautiful waterfall and a cave, and it's called En-gedi. And everybody in the desert knows that if you need water, you can go up to En-gedi and sit in the shade, and you can get some water. So David has taken his men, and he's gone to the cave, and he's gotten water from En-gedi. But while they're up there, they hear Saul with his army coming. And they realize that he's coming up to En-gedi to get water and shade too. So David tells all of his men, get inside the cave. Just line up along the side of the cave. Take a deep breath and don't move. On the count of 3, don't move anything. 1, 2, 3. See if you can do it too. And sure enough, here comes Saul with his army. And Saul walks into the cave and decides he's going to lie down and take a nap. And he lay down in the cave, and one of the men did this to David. And David said, he means he's God's anointed. And David isn't going to do anything to hurt Saul, even though Saul's trying to kill David. David is loyal to the king that God has anointed. David's already been anointed king. He knows he's going to be the next king, but he isn't going to do anything to hurt the king that God anointed. Well, Saul is sound asleep, and while he's asleep, somebody else on the other side of the room says, and David goes back. And he tiptoes over to Saul, and he takes his sword, and he cuts off the bottom of Saul's skirt. You see, soldiers in those days didn't wear who they were up on their shoulder like our soldiers do. They wore it around the bottom of their skirt. And he cut that off, and he went back and stood against the cave wall and was very quiet. Oh, it was a nice nap, and Saul stretches, and he gets up, and he stands out in the door of the cave, and the wind hits him, and he feels the wind up above his knees. And he looks down, and the bottom of his skirt is missing. And David says, Saul, is this what you're looking for? And Saul wheels around and sees that David's got his skirt and that the cave is filled with David's soldiers. And he says, oh, David, it's you. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed, David. I don't know why I'm chasing you. David said, I don't know either. I've never tried to do anything to you, King Saul. I've been loyal all your life. I'm your son-in-law. Was the captain of your army. And Saul said, I know, I'm sorry. David, please, please, come home. Come back to the palace. I won't ever be this way again. And David says, well, we'll see. David was smart. He knew that Saul is actually going crazy. He's losing his mind to the devil because he has completely turned away from God, and jealousy has eaten him up. Well, Saul leaves, and David doesn't go back to the palace. And time passes, and then Saul's out looking for David again to kill him. And this time, David's up on a hill, and Saul's down in the valley with his soldiers, and they've got a campfire, and they've gone to sleep. And Saul's got his water bottle on one side, which is absolutely essential to every soldier, and his sword is on the other side. And up on the hill, Abiathar says, that's David's captain, he says, hey, he's down there asleep. Let's kill him. And David says, no, Abiathar, he's God's anointed. I'm not going to kill him, but you can go down and get his water bottle and his sword and bring him back up here, but go carefully and quietly so you don't wake anybody up. And Abiathar thinks, okay. So down the hill he goes quietly, picks up the water bottle, picks up the sword, comes all the way back up the hill, gives it to David and says, "Got it." David says, "Saul, King Saul." Saul says, "Huh? Huh? What's going on?" "Saul! Oh, is that you, David?" "Yes." "Where's your water bottle?" "It's gone." "Where's your sword?" "It's gone." "Well, here they are, Saul. Do you realize that I could have killed you? But I didn't. Why are you chasing me? I'm not after you." And Saul said, "Oh, David, David, I'm so sorry. I'm so ashamed. I don't know why I act like this. Please, David, come on back home. Everything's just going to be fine. Won't you please come home?" And David says, "Well, I'll think about it." Now, David was smart enough not to do it because he knew that Saul was moody and one day he'd be loving David and the next day he'd be wanting to kill him. And David didn't go. But David was loyal, even though sometimes things weren't fair. Now, you know what, kids? Your mama can't always be fair. There are times when she's going to expect you to do something that you really don't want to do and shouldn't have to do. It may be your brother's job. And there are times when you're going to come home with a note from the teacher that says you've misbehaved, and you know you really weren't the one that misbehaved. But do you know what? If she punishes you, she's a good mother. You take it, and you be loyal, not just to your mother, but to whoever your leaders are. Your teacher, your daddy, the oldest brother or sister, your grandmother. They're older than you are, and they know what's best for you. And until God gets ready for you to be old enough to take care of yourself, then you need to do what your leaders are telling you to do. David was loyal to the ones that God had made the leader, and you should be too.